Hey guys, I want to share kind of two quick tips or kind of mistakes I made as like a optometrist doing refraction. So the first mistake was overplussing. So I don't know who's watching this. Hopefully it's other optometrists or people who have just recently graduated. But um, when I graduated or when I was in university, we were always told to push the plus. And the reason we were told to push the plus was to prevent over-minusing. So over-minusing is really bad. It leads to headaches. It can make, short-sightedness even worse in some cases. So we definitely want to avoid that. And the way we did over-plussing was by typically adding the plus. And what I was told was we showed the lens in front of the eye. This is getting quite specific. But if you put the lens in front of the eye, usually ask, is it the same or worse? Same or worse? And I thought if they said same or about the same, then you keep adding the plus, keep adding the plus, keep adding the plus. And you do that for when you're doing each eye monocularly, or if you're doing a subjective kind of binocular balance. I mean, for example, Humphreys, where you blur up one eye, keep adding plus. And most people out in the real world, so when I came to the real world, I tried that tactic and I realized I'm getting all these remakes. People are mad. I suck at my job. People think I'm shit. All the front staff think I'm useless. Like, can't do my job properly. My remakes are going high compared to all the other optometrists because of that, because they're pushing the plus. Now, it's really important not to over minus people, but it's also very, very important to not over plus people, because if you over plus someone, they're going to get blurry glasses and they can't see. So that's like the worst thing that can happen. And it's probably worse in a way, like when they pick up the glasses at the time, it's worse than over minusing people, because if people are over minus, most of them can see really clearly and they're happy because of that. Sure, some of them might get headaches, but the majority, if you're over plus, the glasses are blurry, they can't see. Okay, and that's a big problem. They'll come back for rechecks, they're unhappy, they'll go somewhere else. Okay, now the mistake I was making was trying to push the plus. So instead of saying is it the same or worse, just ask better or worse, and then if they say the same, I'm not going to give them the plus, because with binocular balance, what I found was when you give them the plus, they'll say it's better if they're over minus. Okay, so that's one tip. So try to avoid. I know we shouldn't over minus, but don't push the plus too much, because you can result in blurry glasses. Okay, we don't want that either. Now the second, so that was one of the biggest remakes. One of the biggest reasons I gave remakes was over plussing, was giving too much plus. That's kind of the one reason. Now the second reason is to do with the reading prescription. So here's a reading card. It's going to be reversed. So typically, if someone's age 40 and above, you need a reading prescription. And what I did for reading was I just used the age-based table. You can Google it, age-based table. I didn't do any special testing for, or I'll explain that in a bit of detail. But I didn't do any special testing for the reading. Basically, I'll give them the card here, and based on their age, like for example, if they're 40 to 45, then I'll give them like a plus one or a plus 125, and like 55 to 60, 45 to 50 would be like between a 125 and a 150, like early 50s 175, late 50s plus 2, then 60s and above plus 250. That's kind of the ads I'll give these people on top of their distance prescription. Now the issue with that is when you get to a higher plus, usually the 150s and above, because a lot of these people are still working. Now you've got to consider two things, okay? Phone use, and reading a book, and your computer. And the issue is a computer screen, a desktop, if you're working, is a bit further away. So you can imagine if you give someone reading glasses like a +2, they're going to be sitting like this on their computer. So you've got to make sure, you've got to check that, you need to ask what they do if they're still working, because a lot of people work beyond 60s, 70s, still on a computer as well, right? So you've got to ask what they do, and if they're on a computer, because they could say, oh, I use a laptop. A laptop's a bit closer, or a tablet. It's not the same thing. You need to be asking if they're office-based. If they're office-based and they're like in the late 50s, you need to give them a special lens just for the computer. You need to tell them that, hey, this is good. This is like, if you give them a reading prescription for reading, which is, this distance, hey, it's good for reading, but if you're out here, it's going to be blurry. So you really need to explain that. And what I used to do was I used to always test the range. Like, are you happy with that? Happy with that? But then what I kind of realized was I could just sort of come up with it on the spot. So typically, if you give someone a +1, you give half that prescription to +2. You give them +1 for the computer. That's what I'd usually do. And usually I'm right most of the time. I don't know. Or other options are to explore as occupationals. So occupationals are a lens where the top part is for the computer and the bottom is for reading. And you don't really have to adjust the prescription. Like some occupations are just set for computer up the top, and some are just set for So you don't have to get too technical. Don't try and overcomplicate it too much, because if you're like working in a corporate job, which most of people will be, you're going to see like 20 people a day. So you can't afford to do all these tests all the time, not just the time wise, but just like the energy. So it's okay to kind of freeball it. You'll get that experience, I think, as you build up. But then just the two things to remember: try not to overplus people, and remember, don't give too much plus for the readings. These are the kind of the two biggest mistakes that I made in practice when I was practicing out there. So I kind of really hope that helps you out. Plus remakes, they do kind of suck. I think no matter what you can do, you're just doing the best you can. So sometimes you try and do your best, and with the prescription, some people like they have dry eye. They can't say they mean one, they mean two. They can't do their check properly. Like, don't worry too much. Here's like another tip as well. Like, don't worry too much if you're like 0.25 out. Like, I used to always try and get like the like 0.25 still like perfect, but you can't. So like, just make sure they can happy. Don't over plus people. Don't give too much plus for up close. Obviously, don't over minus people, but I guess like a lot of people know that. Just because that's how we taught in university, is to over plus, and that was a big problem. And also checking be practical with their reading as well if they're on a computer. So you really know ask them what they do. Don't try and rush it too much. With the prescription check, try not to rush through the prescription check either, because if people feel rushed, they're more likely to come back for like a recheck. Even though the job properly, they feel like it's rushed and it's not right. So there's a lot of psychology at play as well. And finally, just a final tip. I know this is a bit rambly of a video, but a final tip is try not to oversell. Don't undersell, don't oversell your prescription. So what I mean by underselling is like, don't feel bad about selling glasses. Some people want to get a new pair. So that's where you just talk about the options. Like, hey, I think even though your prescription is stable, you're free to get another pair. Some people want that permission. Like, don't say you don't need glasses. Or just talk about, like, give them the option. Make them the one that put them in the driving seat. Okay, unless like obviously if they're not meeting driving stand, they want to drive and they need to wear glasses. That's like a case where they should be wearing glasses. But like, don't force it too much. You'll get a lot of people in their 40s who are like, I'm noticing the reading is not as good as it used to be. They just want a reason to why that is. They don't actually want a solution to that problem just yet. So you just talk about, hey, you need a reading prescription. So I do recommend that maybe the next time you come in, we can look at reading glasses. But at this stage, just notice that the reading won't be as good. And if you do have problems, you can always come back. So just mention that sort of stuff. Talk about that. So don't try and force the sale. Like, at the end of the day, you're not there to convince, as an optometrist, you're not there to convince people to get glasses. You're just there to kind of solve their need or issue. That's kind of a tip there for anyone who's interested. Finally, I just want to finish off. If you are struggling with remakes, like the psychology behind it, I did do a video about it somewhere here. Also, I'm looking at doing some kind of coaching as well. Like, if you want to get in touch with me, there's Google Forms linked down below. If you want to get in touch with me, have a chat if you're worried about work, or if you're about to start work and you want to talk about it a bit more, or if you want to if you're in your career, you want to have just chat about life in general, like, and things like that. So yeah, you can drop me down. There'll be a link down below for Google Forms you can fill out. I'll leave a video around here about how to deal with remakes. Other than that, stay focused and talk soon. And thanks for watching.